The hardest workers you know are almost never the wealthiest people you know. That's not bad luck. It's not unfair timing. It's a trap, and it's been running quietly in the background of your life for years. Somewhere right now, someone with less talent than you, less experience than you, fewer hours in their day than you, is out-earning you using resources they don't even own. By the end of this, you'll recognize your own habits in at least 3 of what I'm about to describe. One of them is costing you more than the rest combined. 500 years ago, a man named Niccolo Machiavelli watched rulers rise and fall, not because they lacked ambition, but because they misunderstood where power actually came from. He didn't about hustle. He didn't write about working harder than your rivals or grinding through longer hours than the competition. He wrote about forza propria and forza altrui, your own strength and the strength of others, of resources, of assets, of institutions that keep functioning whether or not you personally are in the room. The princes who lasted understood that personal effort has a ceiling, a hard limit built into the fact they were only ever one person, however capable. The ones who fell believed effort alone was enough, that enough willpower and diligence could substitute for structure. And that belief is precisely what destroyed them, usually slowly, usually without them noticing until it was too late to reverse. That distinction is the entire subject of this video, dressed up in modern clothes, running through mortgages and side businesses and LinkedIn messages instead of armies and city-states, but powered by exactly the same engine it ran on in the 16th century. 7 traps. Some of them will feel obvious once named. A few of them will feel uncomfortably close to home. Here's the first trap, and you're probably living inside it right now without a name for it. You gup. You to work. You trade 8, 9, sometimes 11 hours for a number that lands in your account every 2 weeks, and it feels like the responsible thing to do. It feels stability. Your parents did it. Their parents did it. Nobody around you questions it, because questioning it feels reckless, almost disloyal to your employer, to the plan, to the version of adulthood you were handed. So you keep showing up, keep trading hours for dollars, and you tell yourself the trade is fair because the check clears. You get a raise once a year, if you're lucky, and you celebrate it, without ever asking what percentage of the value you actually created walked out the door with someone else's name on it. That question feels almost rude to ask, almost ungrateful. So you don't ask it, and the arrangement continues year after year, invisible because it's so normal. But somewhere in your city, someone with a fraction of your skill bought a small, unremarkable property, rented it out, and now collects money every month from tenants they've never met, from an asset that keeps producing while they sleep, while they're on vacation, while they're doing anything other than working. They didn't quit their job to do it. They just stopped believing their job was the only lever available to them. Same 24 hours in the day as you. Completely different relationship with time. Machiavelli warned rulers against depending entirely on their own labor, comparing it to a soldier who is only strong while he's the one swinging the sword. The moment he's tired, injured, or absent, the strength disappears with him. Your income has the same weakness built into it. It disappears the moment you stop showing up, the moment you get sick, the moment the company decides your role isn't needed anymore. That's not stability. That's dependency wearing stability's clothes. And it's worn that costume so convincingly that most people never bother to check what's underneath. Notice too that this trap rarely announces itself with a bad job or a cruel boss. Most of the time it hides inside a perfectly decent one. Good co-workers, reasonable hours, a manager who genuinely likes you. Comfort is exactly what makes this trap sustainable for decades. because there's never a single bad day dramatic enough to force the question. The question worth sitting with tonight isn't whether you work hard. Of course, you work hard. It's whether anything you built today will still be paying you 5 years from now, or whether it evaporates the second you stop. Picture two people standing at the exact same starting line. Both have $20,000. One of them locks it away, calls it prudent, calls it responsible, watches it grow at a pace so slow it barely outruns inflation, year after year, a number on a screen that feels safe precisely because nothing ever seems to happen to it. The other uses that same $20,000 as leverage, a down payment on something larger, something that produces income of its own from month one. 10 years later, the first person's roughly the same shape of money they started with, maybe a little more, maybe a little less depending on the year. The second person controls an asset worth several times more, partially paid down by income the asset itself generated, income that came from tenants or customers or a business, not from their own labor. Same starting point, same 10 years, same $20,000. Wildly, outcomes. And here's what you've probably been doing instead. Treating every form of debt as identical, as dangerous, as something to avoid entirely, because somewhere along the way debt and danger got fused into a single word in your head, and nobody ever bothered to pull them apart for you. Nobody taught you the difference between debt that drains you and debt that pays for itself. Machiavelli made a related observation about mercenary armies, soldiers who fight only because they're paid, whose loyalty evaporates the instant the money stops. Bad debt behaves exactly like a mercenary. It only serves you while you keep feeding it, and the moment income slows, it turns against you. But debt attached to an asset that generates its own income isn't a mercenary at all. It's an ally that pays its own way, that keeps working even in the months you don't. Confusing the two isn't caution. It's a 5 or 6 figure mistake spread quietly across a decade. One you'll never see as a single moment of loss, only as a slow accumulation of what didn't happen, of door technically open the entire time. A small distinction worth carrying forward. The question is never simply, is this debt? It's, does the thing I'm borrowing for pay for itself, or does it depend on me paying for it? One sentence, but it separates almost every good financial decision from almost every bad one. Ask yourself something. Why does being exhausted feel like proof that you're winning? Because that's the lie underneath the third trap, and it's one of the most comfortable lies there is. Precisely because it's so socially rewarded. Busy feels productive. Busy, like evidence. Tell someone you had no time to breathe today, and watch how quickly they nod with something close to respect. If you're tired at the end of the day, surely that means you did something that mattered. So you keep every task on your own plate, keep every decision running through you, keep telling yourself that doing it all yourself is discipline, is control, is what a serious, dependable person does. It isn't. It's a ceiling you built with your own hands, one task at a time, without ever noticing you were building it. There's only one of you, and one person, no matter how sharp or driven or well-intentioned, can only produce so much in 24 hours. That's not a character flaw. It's arithmetic. Meanwhile, someone else, doing a fraction of your daily grind, has quietly handed off the tasks that don't require their specific judgment, to people, to processes, to tools, to systems that run without their direct hand on them, and freed up hours to spend on the 2 or 3 decisions that actually move the needle. They're not lazier than you. In fact, they're often less busy and more effective, which is a combination most people have never even considered possible. They just stopped confusing motion with output. Machiavelli that the strongest rulers didn't try to master skill personally. They surrounded themselves with capable people and focused their own energies only they could make, the ones that required their specific judgment and nobody else's. Every hour you doing something someone else could do adequately, or something a simple process could handle without you, is an hour stolen from the one thing only you can do well. A small, practical place to start. At the end of tomorrow, write down every task you touched and put a single mark next to the ones that genuinely required you specifically. Most people are shocked by how short that second list is, and even more shocked by how long they've been carrying the rest of it without questioning why. There's a version of this trap that's even harder to spot, because it doesn't look like overwork at all. It looks like control. You tell yourself no one else can do it the way you do it, that the quality would drop, that it's simply faster to handle it yourself than to explain it to someone else. Sometimes that's even true in the short term for a single task on a single day, but stretched across months and years, that belief becomes a cage you built for yourself and then locked from the inside, and the only person with the key spends every waking hour too busy to use it. So let's be honest about where this actually leads, because the first traps mostly cost you opportunities, money left on the table, growth that happened slower than it should have, a version of the last few years that could have compounded faster if you'd known what to look for. Those are real costs, but they're recoverable ones. What's coming next costs you something harder to get back. It costs you your future quietly, one ordinary decision at a time, in ways that never announce themselves as mistakes while they're happening, until one day you look up and the decade is gone, and you're left trying to explain to yourself how a person this capable ended up this far behind where they expected to be. You've built a habit, probably without noticing, of not needing anyone. You solve your own problems. You figure things out alone, at your desk, at midnight, refreshing search results instead of picking up the phone. You tell yourself this is strength, that leaning on people is a weakness you've simply outgrown, a habit left over from a time before you knew better. And for a while it works. You're capable enough that self-reliance carries you further than it carries most people, which is exactly what makes the trap so hard to see. It looks like success right up until the moment it doesn't. Because then the opportunity you actually wanted, the one that would have changed everything, quietly goes to someone else. Not because they were more qualified than you. Because they were in the room and you weren't, and the room isn't a place strangers wander into. It's a place trusted people get pulled into by other trusted people, months or years before the opportunity ever becomes public. Long before a posting or a pitch deck or an application ever exists. Machiavelli understood that a wise ruler didn't try to be strong in every area himself. He built relationships with people whose strengths covered his own gaps, and those relationships became a kind of power that couldn't be built alone, no matter how capable he personally was. Isolation feels like independence. It's actually a slow, invisible tax on every opportunity you'll never even find out you missed. Because nobody sends you a notification about the door that never opened. You just never hear about it, and you assume it never existed. Now flip that. Picture someone else, ordinary in most ways, no more talented than you, who did one thing differently. They let people see their work. They spoke up when they had something worth saying instead of waiting to be asked. They stopped quietly hoping to be noticed and started being visible instead, even when it felt uncomfortable, even when it felt like bragging. And what happened is what always happens when someone does this consistently. Opportunities began arriving before they even asked for them. Introductions, offers, people vouching for them in rooms they weren't even in, saying their name to someone who mattered, at a moment they'll never even know took place. Meanwhile, you've been doing the opposite and calling it humility. staying quiet about your wins, downplaying what you're good at whenever someone compliments it, letting your work speak for itself, except work almost speaks loud enough on its own. Someone has to say it out loud, and if you won't, most people simply won't find out, no matter how good the work actually is. Reputation is not vanity, whatever you were taught growing up. It's a signal that arrives before you do. Deciding how much trust a stranger extends you before you've said a single word to them. A weak signal closes doors silently without an explanation, and you never even learn they were closed. This doesn't mean announcing every small win the moment it happens, and it doesn't mean turning into someone insufferable at every gathering. It means simply refusing to hide competence you've actually earned, in the handful of moments where mentioning it would cost you nothing and could quietly change how the next opportunity finds its way to you. Here's blunt one. You are still waiting for the right time. You've told yourself you'll start once you feel ready, once conditions improve, once you have more money saved, more experience, more certainty that this is the correct move. It sounds like patience. It sounds mature, even wise. It is actually the most expensive trap on this list because it doesn't cost you a specific countable amount. It costs you compounding, and compounding punishes lateness more severely than almost anything else in finance or in life. Someone who starts imperfectly at 25 with modest resources will, in most cases, end up meaningfully ahead of someone who starts flawlessly prepared at 45, simply because time had 20 more years to work in their favor, in the background, without requiring anything further from them. Machiavelli warned that hesitation in the face of opportunity was often more dangerous than acting with incomplete information, because fortune, as he described it, favors those willing to move while conditions are still forming, not those waiting for a certainty that never fully arrives, that keeps receding the longer you wait for it. Waiting, safe. It is quietly the least safe decision available to you, because it's the only one on this entire list guaranteed to cost you time, and time is the one resource nothing you build later can ever buy back. Notice the shape of the excuse the next time it shows up in your own head. It rarely sounds like fear. It usually sounds like planning. One more course, one more year of saving, one more piece of research. And that's exactly why it's so easy to keep believing for another decade. And that brings us to the trap sitting underneath every other one on this list, the one that makes all the others possible. You can fix mindset. You can use correctly. You can delegate, build your network, build your reputation, stop waiting, and still end up trapped quietly years from now, because you never built anything that survives without you standing in the middle of it, holding the whole structure up with your own two hands. This is the quiet failure of people who'd almost everything right. They built income. They built a respected career, one they're genuinely proud of. And every dollar of it still depends entirely on them showing up tomorrow and the day after that, indefinitely forever, with no version of the future in which the income continues if they don't. Someone else further down this same road built something different. Not a job, a system, employees, processes, assets, relationships that keep functioning, whether they're personally involved on a given Tuesday or not, whether they're at their desk or on the other side of the world. When Standard Oil was broken apart by the US government in 1911, specifically to dismantle Rockefeller's fortune and break his hold on the market, something happened that the government did not expect. He got richer, not because he fought the ruling in court, but because the value was never actually sitting inside one company by one man in the first place. It was distributed across a system built to function without him standing over it every single day. Machiavelli made nearly the same point about kingdoms. The ones that lasted weren't held together by a single powerful ruler, and his personal brilliance. They were held together by institutions and structures capable of outliving whoever currently sat on the throne. If everything you've built disappears the moment you stop showing up to it, you haven't built wealth. You've built a very well-paying obligation, dressed up to look like an achievement. And the two can feel identical for years before the difference finally makes itself known. Usually at the exact moment you can least afford to learn it, when your health forces a pause, or attention has to go somewhere else entirely, and the income you counted on simply isn't there anymore, because it was never separate from you in the first place. This is also the trap that quietly swallows every other fix on this list. If you stop one step too early, you can build a network and never turn any of those relationships into something operates without your constant tending. You can build a reputation and never convert it into an asset that keeps working while you're doing something else. Systems are the step most people skip, not because it's the hardest step conceptually, but because it's the least urgent feeling one. Nothing forces you to build a system today. There's always another deadline that feels more pressing. And that's exactly why most people who understand every other principle on this list still never end up free of their own labor. Before we go further, there's something worth knowing about the man whose ideas have been threading through everything so far. Something most people never learn about him. Machiavelli didn't die wealthy, and he didn't die powerful. When the political faction he'd aligned himself with fell from power in Florence, he lost his government position, was briefly imprisoned and tortured on suspicion of conspiracy, and spent his remaining years largely shut out of the corridors. He understood better than almost anyone alive. He wrote The Prince partly as an attempt to win back a position of influence, hoping the very rulers he was studying so closely might read it, recognize what he had to offer, and bring him back in from the cold. It never really worked, not in any way that mattered to his own fortunes. He spent his final years financially unremarkable, watching the mechanics of power from the outside, describing them with total clarity for a leader who was never him. Understanding leverage perfectly and applying it to your own life are not the same skill. And the gap between those two things is where most people who read the right books still end up stuck. Knowing the trap exists doesn't disarm it on its own. Only building differently does, starting now, not after one more year of thinking about it. So here's what to actually do with this, starting tonight, not someday, not once things settle down, not once you feel ready. First, pick one task you did today purely out of habit, something that didn't require your specific judgment, and write down who or what could have done it instead. A person, a piece of software, a simple checklist. You don't have to fix it tonight. You just have to see it clearly in writing, because you can't delegate what you refuse to name, and most people never even get this far. Second, send one message to someone you've been meaning to reconnect with, not to ask for anything, just to reopen the door, to remind them you exist and you're doing well. Networks don't build themselves from nothing in a crisis. When you suddenly need them, they get built quietly, months or years before you ever need them, by people who are willing to reach out with nothing to gain in the moment. Third, look at one thing you're currently doing entirely alone, something with no system, no process, nothing written down anywhere but your own memory, and ask what it would take to make it survive a week without you. Not a year, just a week. That question alone will show you exactly where your leverage is missing, faster than any amount of reading about it will. None of these three take more than 15 minutes combined. That's the point. Leverage doesn't require a dramatic life overhaul to begin, a resignation letter, or a large sum of capital sitting ready to deploy. It requires you to stop treating your time, your relationships, and your effort as the only tools available to you, and start treating them as the first three of several, with the others waiting to be picked up the moment you're willing to reach for them. Most people who watch a video like this one nod along, feel something shift for a few minutes, and then return to exactly the same habits by the following week, because recognizing a pattern and interrupting it are two entirely different of will. The recognizing part is what you just did. The interrupting part happens tomorrow morning in an ordinary decision that won't feel significant at the time, which is precisely why most people let it pass unchanged. You not lazy. You are not behind because you lack talent, and nothing here was suggesting otherwise. The hardest workers you know are rarely the wealthiest people you know, not because hard work doesn't matter, but because hard work without leverage just means you're the strongest person still pulling the entire weight alone, indefinitely with no relief in sight. Everything covered here isn't new information dressed up to sound clever. It's 500 years old, worn differently, repeating itself in a new century because the underlying mechanics of power never actually changed. Only the language describing them did, and most people never bothered to translate it into their own life. This channel isn't here to motivate you for 20 minutes and then disappear until the next upload. It's here to keep handing you the mechanics other people never explain clearly, one uncomfortable truth at a time, without the fluff and without pretending any of this is easy. Machiavelli spent his final years writing down everything he understood about power, for rulers who mostly never read it carefully enough to use it. You don't have that excuse tonight. You have the framework already laid out in front of you, and what you do with the next 24 hours will tell you more about your future than anything you've read or watched in the past year. If you saw yourself in more than one of these traps tonight, you already know, somewhere underneath the discomfort, which one to start dismantling first. Subscribe if you want the rest of the framework, because everything you just heard was only the entry point into how it actually works.